Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. My name is Cyndy. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so this is Monday, the 17th of November. I'm putting this video out today. This is there's a couple of things here in Canada that I wanted to look at. The first is Danielle Smith was elected or chosen. She was chosen actually by um, other United Progressive Conservatives voting for her. So she wasn't elected in an election, but she is currently the Premier of Alberta, replacing Jason Kenney after he sort of had this like real big non-confidence vote and he didn't do very well on it. So I want to take a look at her because she's just, I don't know, she's just sort of out there. And what's frightening is that she does appear to be reflecting views of a significant number of Albertans. So I want to take a look at her and see what the heck is going on with her. And honestly, what we're looking at come the May 2023 election. And the other thing I want to take a look at is right now in Ottawa, there is a inquiry going on regarding the federal government's use of the Emergency Act during the Freedom convoy protest that sort of went to Ottawa and then just planted its butt down in the center of the city and wouldn't move for days and days and days. And so there's a couple of things going on, and I'm honestly I'm not as well read on this as I should be, but I know that Alberta and Saskatchewan, I think Quebec, all have standing in this. So there's this inquiry going on the one hand, but for some reason, I want to say that the Freedom Convoy themselves is actually suing the federal government over the fact that they were breaking the law, and then they got arrested, and then they got their vehicles impounded, and apparently they didn't like that. So I want to take a look at that. So we're going to start. I'm in Alberta, as you know. Um, and I'm going to start there. All right. Now, Danielle Smith, part of what prompted this is she is all hepped up on trying to legislate or create a piece of legislation called, I think it's like the Alberta Sovereignty Act or some stupid thing like that. You can tell I'm not impressed, okay? So basically, what it says is what she's trying to do is she wants to enact this piece of legislation that basically says, yeah, we'll take everything we want and everything we can get from Ottawa, from the federal government. Like when we need our roads upgraded or our airports upgraded or we're putting in transit, we need the federal government to step in. However, if the federal government does something we don't like, well, we are going to enact our own sovereignty and we're not going to listen to them. So she's already raised a whole bunch of eyebrows with that sort of attitude. Um, it really, in many ways, there's a reason I think why Alberta is sometimes referred to as Northern Texas. No slam against Texans who aren't big fans of Abbott, okay? So that's what we've got going on here. Now, last week, she and part of the reason she's in such a tiff is because she didn't like the fact that Canada, like a whole bunch of other countries on the planet, sort of mandated vaccines, and they said, "Listen, you need to get vaccinated." And there were particularly federal employees who were sort of mandated. It was like, listen, get vaccinated or you're just not going to be able to come to the office or work under our umbrella. So anyway, she makes a statement last week that says, I'm paraphrasing, but I think I have it pretty close. The unvaccinated have been the most discriminated you heard me right, discriminated group of people in the last 50 years. So, like most Albertans and most Canadians and probably people around the world were trying to lift their freaking jaw up off the floor. Okay, so that means, of course, that let's just not even go with the whole Indigenous people who have been discriminated against in this country for hundreds of years. Let's not talk about the handicapped. Let's not talk about, the HBGTQ grouping of people. I'm not making fun. There's just too many letters. I can't keep them all straight. Um, but alternatives, right? Let's not talk about the elderly. Hell, let's not even talk about animal abuse, okay? Like, honest to God. But no, the unvaccinated who willingly chose to not get vaccinated were the most discriminated group. And listen, I have clients who can't get vaccinated for various health reasons. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who willingly chose to not get vaccinated because they just didn't like the idea of somebody telling them that they should. And you know what? Listen up. These are the same people who probably have their kids vaccinated when they're babies and toddlers. There's a whole list of vaccinations that kids really do need to have before they start school. Apparently, though, that I don't know, somehow that reads different to them. I don't get it. So I want to take a look at her and what that looks like going forward. She is going to be in. If this was her, you know, running leap into being the premier of Alberta, it's a big flop. And one can only imagine that it's going to get worse because she's going to be very, very aggressively pushing her agenda because we've got that federal election coming up in May. Now, Rachel Notley is the leader of the NDP, and NDP actually stands for like New Democratic Party, but they're sort of known as center left. Okay, um, we're going to call the Liberal center just for the sake of this argument. So you have the Conservative Party and the United Conservative Party, which are different things, but the same. On the left, and you have sort of liberals in the center who are, and then the NDP is left of that. So they would be in the state. They would be like the Bernie Sanders grouping of people. Okay. Now, so this election, first of all, it's going to be interesting because it's literally going to be, the battle of the women. And that in and of itself should be really interesting. But it just also feels as if before Danielle Smith got into politics, she worked at a radio station. Rachel Notley has been in politics all her life, including at the knee of her father, who was also in politics. So it's sort of a little bit like somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience and opens her mouth and doesn't think, going up against a real seasoned pro. But I want to take a look. You know what? Listen, I'm just going to ask a quick pendulum question. Now, listen, this is months out, okay? But let's just get a reading on the energies right now, okay? So to start with, is Danielle Smith going to be, I guess, reelected as Premier of Alberta as a result of the May 2023 provincial election? Okay, that's a no. Is Rachel Notley going to be elected as the Premier of Alberta as a result of the May 2023 election? Yes. All right. So what I want to do is I want to just take a look at Danielle Smith's next, 5, 6 months, 7 months, like that. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay. Danielle Smith, current trajectory. Danielle Smith, current trajectory. Danielle Smith, current trajectory. Here we go. Okay, interesting. I can almost like do the whole reading with the first 4 cards. So we're starting off with the 6 of Pentacles. So the Conservative Party, just broadly and generally speaking, is that party who always sort of starts their speeches with the words, we think blank, in this case Albertans, are smart, and we think that they know what to do with their money, and so we are dedicated to putting more money back in their pockets. And they don't tell you that the reason and the method that they use to do that is not to cut taxes. No, no. It's not to increase the minimum wage. No, no. It is to cut basic services and start charging you for them. That's what governments do when they say that. And that's across the board, okay? The Republicans, absolutely no different. So that's going to be her line, all right? We're going to put money back in Albertans' pockets because they know what. And people don't think about it, right? They just hear the words and they go, yeah, I could use some more, bucks in my pocket. Sure, bring it on. And they don't realize that all of a sudden um, they're paying more for just basic everyday stuff. You want to renew your driver's license. You want to get a marriage license. You want to fill up at the gas pump. You want to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, all of a sudden price has gone up. And they compensate that by saying, well, listen, you got that $4 a month tax break. What is your problem? That's going to be her line. Interesting then, though, she's not going to do well. It's like she's going to get, I almost want to say like, and I don't know her, okay? Like I don't know nothing about her yet. But it's as if she just doesn't even listen to her own inner voice and she just blurts whatever is in her head. This is what happens when you end up with people who have so closely aligned themselves with extremist left policies like um you know, the Freedom Convoy, and that's part of Alberta's having that fight with the federal government over some blockades that were taken care of here in Coots, Alberta. But she doesn't think. I also think that there's going to be more and more information, surprisingly, that's going to come out about her. You would have thought that stuff would have come out as the sort of primary, if you will, elections was going on to choose the replacement for Kenny. But it feels as if not only does she not listen to her own good sense, but there's also going to be stuff coming out about her. She's also not going to have some actual viable plans in terms of the budget. And the thing is, for those of you who don't know, as a result of the crazy going on with OPEC, and gas prices and the demand for gas and the whole Ukrainian Russia thing, in the last like months, 6 months, Alberta has gone from being in a financial deficit to being something like $13 billion in the red. So there's going to be something that goes on with money and finances, whether it's her budgeting, whether it is the sort of stuff that she wants to implement and push forward. I don't think that she's going to end up making the kind of sense or impact perhaps that she thinks she's going to. It just doesn't feel like this is somebody who's sort of in it for her own gain and her own benefit. And I have a feeling there could be some information coming out about that. All right. Ultimately, she walks away. Ultimately, she is going to have to walk away. Part of the reason for that, honestly, is that there's always extremes in every city, in every town, in every country, in every arena. But by and large, um, you know, Albertans are they sort of want a just world. They want sort of a sense of everybody can make it. And it doesn't feel as if that's going to be the message that comes across with her. Um, and so it feels ultimately that Albertans, when the election comes, they are going to be the one who makes the decision about who and how we want this province to go forward. Also, for those of you who don't know, Rachel Notley is she's a spicy little lady, and she doesn't put up with anything. She's a scrapper, okay? And so, honestly, Danielle Smith I think, is getting into the ring with somebody who is way above her pay grade. I think she's just going to be bamboozled in some ways. Okay. It also, this is the other thing that Danielle Smith is going to be fighting against here in Alberta, is that even conservatives don't like her. Even conservatives thinks she has slithered or skidded too far to the left. And so just within a very, very conservative province, she already has people who are not happy with her. They don't like what she's doing. They don't like the way she's pushing it. And she won, just, for others to know, she won by a very small, like, I think she only ended up with something like a 44 or something percent approval. So it's not like this was a landslide victory and all the people who were voting just loved her and thought she was great. She didn't win by an astonishing amount, but she won by more than everybody else, I guess, in the final analysis. She's also not going to it's not going to be an easy journey for her over the next few months. There's going to be a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry. And she really is in some way going to be punished for her inexperience. And she's going to not be interested in looking at things from other perspectives. It's like blinders, right? It's like some of those real left wing Republicans that you see in the United States. Don't tell me what's in front of my eyes. I'm telling you the truth as I think it is, or as I believe it to be, or as I want it to be, and you should just listen to me. It's not going to go well. Also, looks like there could be some dirty tricks going on, and that's also going to come to the surface for her. We can anticipate, Albertans, we can anticipate the next months from now until May. So, what is that, like 7, 8 months? We can anticipate them to be a little tumultuous here in the province. It's going to be a continual push, pull, tug feeling, where she says something, she's backtracking, people are up in arms, she tries to push stuff through, she's not going to get the support she thinks she should have. There's going to be a lot of that kind of energy around. So for Albertans, buckle up, because I think it's going to get a little crazy. All we can really honestly, and I said this before that whole vote thing with her. I said the best thing that could happen is that Danielle Smith gets elected, because she is just left enough that even people who may not love the NDP are likely to shift that way, simply because she just is going to come across as way too extreme. And I have to tell you, I don't believe that the percentage of people who are that extreme left in the province are sufficient to actually keep her into office. In fact, according to the scuttlebutt, that was one of the things that the UPCP were really worried about with her winning, was that they absolutely would lose the next election to the Notleys, because that's not what people want. Okay, let's move on to Canada, shall we? So I want to take a look at this, and I apologize because I really have this sort of muddled up in my head. But what I'm going to look at is just an overview of the federal government pertaining to the Emergencies Act and whether um, ultimately they are going to, I guess, be vindicated, whether ultimately they are going to be found to have handled the situation in a moderate, careful, and reasonable way, as opposed to the extremist, swashbuckling, over the top way that some people are painting it to be. So let's take a look at the federal government pertaining to inquiries or investigations into the use of the Emergencies Act pertaining to um, the COVID crisis. Okay, here we go. Uh, Federal Government Emergency Act Resolution. Federal Government Emergency Act Resolution. Okay. So we're starting off with the Knight of Swords. Now, sometimes that Knight of Swords can be a bit impetuous. It can be, impatient. It sort of just charges ahead, kind of without thinking, without putting all of the pieces into place. But, and I'm not saying that they did or they didn't behave this way. I'm saying this is what the card means and this is what it's indicating. The mitigator, if you will, is the fact that things were spiraling out of control so quickly in this country, as with all the others, around the time of COVID, that they had to move um, quickly to get things done. And what was sort of so wrong with the protesters is the restrictions had already started to be loosened when this protest in Ottawa and other places across the country took place with these truckers just literally blocking the roads. I mean, in Ottawa, apparently they got in there and they weren't there for a day or two. They were there for several weeks. And apparently, Ottawa, or that part of Ottawa, is losing something like $3 billion a day because businesses had to stay closed and people were scared to go into the area where all the trucks were. People live in those areas. It was not sort of like it was like there was residential areas around there. You've got people who were traumatized from the constant horn blowing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what this is talking the cards have are they're telling two sides of the same story. On the one hand, the federal government, particularly in Ottawa over that convoy protest, they needed already to move in and act quickly because the police department, if I'm remembering it correctly, did not really have as good a handle on the situation as they needed to or they should have. The other side of it is the convoy people themselves got this thing in their head. They rushed forward. They didn't care about the consequences because, they just thought that they were impervious to them. And so when those consequences started raining down on their head, like literally they were arrested and their vehicles were seized or impounded, et cetera, well, all of a sudden it got really real and that wasn't fair. So you have two sides of the story that are sort of literally trying to extract themselves from the muck, right? On the one hand, you have the federal government and their story and their reality and their reactions had they become so twisted, frankly, not only, just by the media, by people who are angry, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're kind of in a mission to sort of get the facts out there and straighten things out. On the other hand, um, the people who are involved in fighting this, again, are really bowing down to that extreme freedom at all costs sort of attitude. And so they find themselves in a position of having to fight the fight honestly, almost to save face, almost to say, well, listen, you guys, we're with you and you can trust us and you can vote for us, by the way, in the next election because we're there for you. So there's kind of like, in some ways you have two adversaries who are in their own ways both trying to create their own, their the same thing but independently, right? Now ultimately the rule of law is going to ultimately end up mattering. I think that you're going to, and like some of this stuff was serious, right? Like there was, if I'm not mistaken, it was in southern Alberta. I mean, there were people arrested for threatening like RCMP officers. Okay, like this wasn't, and they had like rifles and guns and stuff. Like this wasn't just like, oh, you blocked a road for a couple of hours and that's too bad. We're mad at you. That's not how it was. It was really, really, they were just log jamming everything so you couldn't move. And the one in southern Alberta was like at the border. Okay. So there was just like, there's a lot more to it. And over time, the facts have gotten a little fuzzy. And, so now it's a matter of trying to sort of almost get people to remember what was happening, how it was feeling. But ultimately, I think that ultimately it feels as if it's going to be what was in the highest interest of the country as a whole, okay? What was going to secure the country and keep it safe, all right? Becomes an opposition to trying to tear down the world and rip up the government and, just do things your way because you can blow your horn louder, figuratively and literally, okay? So this is the fight, all right, just for clarity. That's actually what's going on here. And ultimately, it really does feel as if the federal government, that the judgment that's rendered is going to have to do with the majority of the safety of the people versus a very loud minority. Okay, that's what you have here. And the thing to remember is, particularly with that Freedom Convoy, um, I no longer remember, but it was a small percentage of truckers. Like most mainstream truckers were saying they're nuts and we're not participating in this. And furthermore, they're kind of giving us truckers a bad name. So it looks as if ultimately what you're gonna end up with a little bit of a mixed bag, but it feels like ultimately um what's going to be determined is that the government really did not step outside of their authority to keep the country safe and keep it moving forward. So that's what that looks like right now. That hearing just started this past Thursday, and apparently it looks like it's going to go on for about 6 weeks. And like apparently Trudeau is going to be testifying. Like there's a lot going on, and so um, I will probably revisit this as the weeks go on and see if I can get a little bit more clarity of what's going on there. But that's sort of what I know now. So this was my look at Alberta and the federal government for Canada for right now. Now, listen, tomorrow the normal U.S. political reading is going to be released on Wednesday. The video for the Shine Your Light Energy Circle, invoking protection and a calming of temperatures regarding the US election, is going to be released. So there's a busy week here. There's a lot going on. Keep your comments and thumbs up and views coming. Every single bit of it is completely, completely appreciated. Until next time, take care, be well, and we'll see you really soon. Bye bye.